The New York Jets have had a large question mark looming around a specific position, and now we seem to be getting more clarity. Also, a surprising offensive weapon makes an announcement this week. What's up, Jets fans? Welcome to another edition of JetNation Live. We are your hosts, Dylan Tehrman and Chris Schubert. Back with another episode. Had some internet problems last night on my end, so had to push the schedule back one day. Appreciate Chris for being so flexible with me. Chris, how are we doing tonight?
Good. I mean, I would have done the whole 53 by myself, but it would have just been my list. You would have been probably very upset with me if I just went through my top 53 rankings and didn't have yours in there. But yes, we've got the top 53 tonight, which will be fun. We actually did a little bit in the pre-show, some changes right beforehand, so should be a fun show. Some news, our rankings finish up, lots of stuff to talk.
Yeah, absolutely. You mentioned it. Our rankings. We're definitely going to finalize it now. This is the complete finale of it. We're ranking every single player 1 through 53. We're not going to be crazy and go all the way down to the 90. I did rank the practice squad, although I don't really believe in those rankings, but we did rank 1 through 53. And no, it wouldn't have been fun to see just your rankings because I disagree with quite a few of them. So It'll be fun to get into. But the news of the week, first and foremost, a wide receiver makes an announcement. Corey Davis, he's going to step away from football. He posted it on his social media. This came after multiple days of missed practice for what was called personal reasons by Robert Saleh. Finally, it comes out that he's been mulling retirement since as early as training camp and telling his teammates about it. So now it comes to a head. He is going to step away from football, so they do put him on the reserve list. They are able to recoup the money that he was owed. I believe it's in the 10 to 11 million range. So there's tons of speculation on who that money should go to now. But Chris, just your thoughts on Corey Davis stepping away, just 28 years old, entering a season where he's going to have the best quarterback throwing to him. So a bit confusing as to why the timing is, but hopefully nothing too crazy in his personal life going on.
Yeah, first and foremost, I mean, the best to Corey and his family. It appeared to be a very tough decision that he was mulling it over for the last couple of weeks, but he needs to do what is best for him. He feels like retiring is the best decision for him and for his family and for his future. And I am never going to criticize somebody who walks away from this game at any point, citing whatever reasons they want to step away. Same thing with Andrew Luck when he stepped away as early in his career as he did. The same applies for Corey Davis. I am never going to criticize a player for stepping away. We know unfortunately, some of the long-term ramifications that playing this game can have on your long-term health. I don't know if that's what weighed on Corey Davis, but because that's in the back of my mind when I think about all of this stuff, I'm sure it's in the back of these players' minds as they think about it. So if any player chooses to step away, I don't care if they're 24, 28, 32, 35, whenever they choose to step away, I'm never going to criticize a player for that. So first and foremost, the best to Corey and his family and whatever is next for him in that regard. Now we can talk about the football ramifications of this for the New York Jets. Yes, they're going to recoup the $10.5 million that Corey would count against the cap for 2023. The only thing they're required to hold on to their books is what his dead cap hit would be if they were to have cut him, let's say 6 weeks ago, 8 weeks ago. That's the only thing they're required to withhold. I think it was only going to be about a couple $100,000, if that. It wasn't a ton of money for the New York Jets. So they recoup all of that cap space, and you have to wonder what they are going to do with it. Well, we know that when Corey Davis was on this roster and after they signed Allen Lazard and even with Garrett Wilson in the building, they were flirting around with Odell Beckham Jr., putting a contract offer in front of Odell Beckham Jr. So we know this team was looking to upgrade this wide receiver department, even with the current core as it's currently constituted, minus Corey Davis. So it stands to reason that the Jets would be reaching out, poking around. It was the reason why I thought they were going to be in the DeAndre Hopkins sweepstakes is because they were poking around already with a fully fledged group. But listen, I'm going to say something that's very controversial to Jets fans. This wide receiver group after Garrett Wilson is subpar. And in a year in which, and I've talked about this so many times, I'm going to sound like a broken record to a lot of people, but it is a point that I feel very strongly about. When you are a team that with all of your actions have made it very, very clear, you are not in 2023 to just win 10, 11 games, get into the postseason, break a postseason streak, and if we go out in the first round, shucks, we'll regroup and we'll do it again next year. That is not the mantra. That is not the goals and expectations that this team is putting on themselves. Listen to what Aaron Rodgers says every time he takes a podium, every time he sits down for an interview. The expectations and goals of this franchise internally inside the four walls of that building are to be competing for an AFC championship, to be competing for a Super Bowl, and being the team that hosts the Lombardi Trophy at the end of the season. Those expectations they've put on themselves with all of their decision making. So with that being the backdrop for this, I can't look at this current group of wide receivers and say, you've told me you're all in. You go out and you spend $7+ million with incentives that gets up to over 8 for Dalvin Cook. And yet you sit around and have the offensive line problems that you've had this offseason, although that appears to be coming together right at the right time for this team. And now you've got what I think is a major hole on this wide receiver department. Garrett Wilson's a wide receiver 1. Allen Lazard, at best, is probably a low-end wide receiver 2. You're now slotting him into being a high-end wide receiver 2 in this offense, right? Randall Cobb, Mecole Hardman, I think these are role players that you're now asking to be wide receiver 3, wide receiver 4, and have major roles for this team. Now, maybe they're going to utilize the backs more out of the backfield and throw the ball to them. Maybe you're going to see more 2 tight end sets and get the 2 tight ends involved. But to me, I got to have every stone unturned if I'm Joe Douglas. You have told this fan base, you have told us, we are all in for 2023. Your wide receiver room doesn't act like you're all in 2023. Your offensive line depth and your starting offensive line unit doesn't stack up with the idea of all your chips being in the middle, all in for 2023. And so I've been a big process guy when it's been on all the shows that we've done this offseason. I've talked about the process, how this process doesn't feel very strict with me, right? They're not fully on board with all in. They say they're all in, but not everything they do matches up with that. So for me, they've got to be on the phone. I've got a bunch of names I can throw at you, but there has to be somebody that's brought into this team before week 1 of the regular season.
Yeah, and just to bring it full circle again, I'm glad that you said there are 2 parts of it, the personal and the football, because it's easy for people that sit up here like you and I to lose sight of the personal side of it because we're so fan-based and so like team-oriented that we're just like, all we see is like team, team this, team that. So I'm glad that you put it that way with Corey. And I agree. I have to say that it takes guts to retire at such a young age because you're doing the hard right thing. What are you going to say?
I just want to address a comment that I'm seeing in the chat because I can see the comments here from Momo,
Sure.
who says, I don't believe Corey Davis retiring causes a problem for the Jets wide receiver room. Hot take. The Jets had a problem in their wide receiver room with Corey Davis on the team. Yeah. Like, I'm sorry. I hate to be the person that brings this news to everybody, but this wide receiver group with Corey Davis was already lacking in comparison. Go look at the Chargers wide receiver room. Go look at the Bengals wide receiver room. Mm-hmm. Those 2 teams just in particular, teams that you are, I'm sorry, going to be directly competing with potentially in the postseason, potentially for a wild card spot. Like those 2 teams just in your own conference are deeper and have a better 1-2 punch at the wide receiver position than you do. And so I'm sorry, I just think they're behind the 8 ball. They were behind the 8 ball if Corey Davis played in week 1. I think they're even further behind the 8 ball now. So the Corey Davis news doesn't change how I feel. I already thought this was a problem.
Yeah, it certainly was a problem. I had Corey Davis slotted in as the wide receiver 2 over Allen Lazard because I just think he's more talented than Allen Lazard. And like you said, Allen Lazard is probably a low-end wide receiver 2. Now he's being thrust up into this high-end wide receiver 2. And I felt like Corey Davis was kind of fringe high-end wide receiver 2. And he could have got you out of more situations. Obviously, the chemistry that Lazard has with Aaron Rodgers is unmatched compared to what Davis has. And when you miss so much time, it's hard to create chemistry. But when you're just talking about talent alone and being able to produce with good quarterback play, I believed in Corey Davis to make a huge impact on this team. So I think it does have an impact on the room, but the room was lacking to begin with because I'm not a huge fan of Cobb as your 5. I'm not a huge fan of using Mecole Hardman as a starter in 11 personnel. I was really hoping that they would go like big bodies like Lazard, Davis, and then maybe Garrett Wilson as your 11 personnel trio. I really wasn't expecting Hardman, to have to be thrust into that. Now he's your slot guy on 11 personnel like every time, and that's really tough. So if you go 12 personnel, you have to have Garrett Wilson and Allen Lazard out there no matter what, because they're your biggest bodies, or else you're going to have Mecole Hardman, Randall Cobb, and now you're 1 injury away from Jason Brownlee having to play football and make an impact with meaningful snaps. Zach Rosenblatt of The Athletic put it out with Rodgers, the amount of targets every person got in camp. Brownlee had 3 targets and 2 catches. That's not going to get it done in the regular season if you've not worked with Rodgers enough. So it does create a huge hole on the team, but it was already a position that I've been pounding the table for that they need to upgrade. And there's been plenty of names floated out there. I think Marquise Brown is one of the realistic names that are going off. Then you have the unrealistic ones like Mike Evans and Devontae Adams.
Just it's never going to happen.
And you mentioned one, and you mentioned the team, but I don't think the team will do it because, like you said, directly competing and they're in a winning window. That's Tyler Boyd of the Cincinnati Bengals, and I really think that that's a name that's intriguing. If they could pull it off, that'd be amazing because it kind of just replaces the body type of Corey Davis. I'm not saying he gives you the run blocking upside of Corey Davis, but do you have any thoughts on who they could potentially bring in? I know you mentioned Boyd to me.
Yeah, I'll just quickly. I forgot to mention Tyreek Hill and Jalen Waddle in my wide receiver duos, right? I didn't mention
Hall of Famer Braxton Berrios.
Christian Kirk and Calvin Ridley in Jacksonville. Like, these are teams that you are potentially going to be directly competing with for seeding, for wild card spots. Like, these are teams you are absolutely going to be up against, and their top 2 wide receiver options are infinitely better than yours. And I love Garrett Wilson. They're just infinitely better than yours. And so that's a huge problem. Look, the Hollywood Brown thing's interesting to me. I know people are viewing the trading of Isaiah Simmons and they are viewing the trading of Josh Jones as a complete fire sale for the Arizona Cardinals. I get it. I can see why you think that. Jones was a backup offensive lineman. The moment they took Paris Johnson 6th overall, Jones was going to be relegated to being a swing tackle and being depth. They had 2 guys that emerged in camp as swing tackle depth for them. I know because I live here in the state and I see it all. I see the conversations all day long. So they felt like he was an expendable asset that could net a additional draft pick. With Isaiah Simmons actively hurt this team during his tenure here in Arizona. He was not a very good player. They could not find a role for him in this system. And so when you bring in, what does it say about Isaiah Simmons? When you bring in a defensive coordinator in Jonathan Gannon to run your team, and one of the guys that could be a linchpin to fixing this defense, they're okay with sending off for a 7th round pick. That says a lot to me about the way they felt about Isaiah Simmons. So again, I know it might scream fire sale, but there are other reasons why these moves could take place. Now, could you get Hollywood Brown? Potentially. You should probably make the phone call and see. The reason why I think the Tyler Boyd thing is more likely, and he's the name that I threw out there, I'll give you another name here in a second that could potentially make some sense. They used 2 draft picks in this year's class on wide receivers, I think, in anticipation of Tyler Boyd not being on this team in 2023, because it is my assumption, hot take, I know, Jamar Chase is going to get a very large contract extension from the Cincinnati Bengals. Okay. I know, hot take, but I believe Jamar Chase is going to be paid there long term. I think the other guy they're going to pay long term is T. Higgins. And so with those 2 guys, they're not going to want to pay 3 wide receivers. So if they let Tyler Boyd go in free agency this offseason, what kind of compensatory pick could they get back? I don't know. But the Jets have 3 4th round picks. They also have a 3rd round pick. That might be better than what Cincinnati would get via the compensatory pick system for Tyler Boyd leaving in free agency. Now, that doesn't mean they're going to do it because they may feel like we want Tyler Boyd on our team. We want to have the best roster we can. But Charlie Jones has apparently had a really good training camp and preseason to where they might be able to just take Tyler Boyd out of the equation, put Charlie Jones in there, and Charlie Jones might be able to give them similar production to what Tyler Boyd was going to give them in the grand scheme of an offense that already has to feature Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And so they might be more receptive to it because they already have their long-term answer on the roster. And the third that they might get, because the Jets could very easily offer a 3rd. And then if they want to get back into round 3, all the way in the 2024 draft, they've got 3 4th round picks as it currently sits. They could take 2 of those 4th round picks, package them together, move up, get themselves into the 3rd round, and still have a pick, another pick on day 2. So there's a lot of ways to do this. I'll give you another name. I know everybody wants to talk about trading.
Before you do, I want to just put it out in the comments. Somebody put it out in the chat. I just want to see if they guessed it right. Is that name Michael Gallup?
It is not Michael Gallup.
Okay.
I'm kind of out on Michael Gallup. I understand why. He's coming off the injury. He has not been very good. Sure. But you look at him and you think, okay, there might be he might be expendable on the roster, and so Dallas might be interested in moving on from him. Everybody wants to talk about, Aaron Rodgers played in Green Bay, played with Devontae Adams. Go trade for Devontae Adams. Everybody wants to talk about Devontae Adams, right? I want to talk about another Las Vegas Raiders wide receiver. You go trade for Hunter Renfrow if you're going to go trade for a receiver.
There it is.
Because they are not going to give up Devontae Adams at this stage. They might trade him closer to the trade deadline. But you want somebody right now that can help your team, you go trade for Hunter Renfrow. You go do it right now. You give him a 3rd, you give him a 4th, you go get Hunter Renfrow, you add him to this team. He's a good player. He would instantly help this group. Garrett Wilson and Hunter Renfrow is a very nice 1-2 punch, in my opinion.
I just want to clip out, go get Hunter Renfrow. He's a good player.
Right, he's a good player. They get good players. That's what you do.
Exactly what they need to do in this window. Like, it's a Super Bowl winning window. You have to go capitalize.
You just spent $8.6 million on a backup running back. No offense to Dalvin Cook, but he's going to, at best, be splitting carries with Breece Hall. So you spent $8.6 million on a backup running back. You can't go trade draft picks for Hunter Renfrow?
Right. And
now,
I mean,
for everybody,
been good. So.
For everybody who wants them to call up Tampa and trade for Mike Evans, they're not going to do that 2 weeks before the season. No. Why would Tampa do that? If Tampa's going to sell, it's going to be when the season completely falls apart and they can move them at the deadline. So, guess what? I'm sorry. I gather around the microphone, everybody. I apologize that I'm going to break this news to you. The New York Jets can't afford to wait until the trade deadline in the National Football League to solve this problem. If they do, I think it's a complete disaster.
Yeah. Yeah, I think the Davante Adams and Mike Evans thing is the week 8 or week 7 type of deal, and you would just have to, get on your knees and pray that your wide receiver group gets you there. And
right, you have to be competitive at that point to want to make that kind of splashy move.
Exactly.
But guess what? You're acting like you're going to be competitive then anyway. So just do it now. Go get Hunter Renfrow. Go try to trade for Tyler Boyd. Michael Gallup, I personally don't like him, but if they made the trade, that would at least be in line with the philosophical direction that they've chosen to take this team in, and I would at least tip my hat and say, thank you, Joe, for recognizing that you have a problem here and you're going to address it.
Right, and my fear is that Hunter Renfrow might not fit under that bucket of big name becoming available that Rodgers alluded to in his press conference when talking about his contract. So if they do decide to wait until week 7, it's going to be a lot of, like I said, praying that they get you through it. Jason Brownlee should not have an impactful role on this team. I could argue that Malik Taylor and Xavier Gibson should be the guy over Jason Brownlee. So it is going to be tough to see how they do that, but he matches up the most with what Corey Davis was, which was a bigger body possession type of receiver. So it'll be tough to see how they do shake it out. But do you take the sure thing, not the sure thing, but the right now trade, or do you gamble a little bit and maybe you're 3-3 entering the Eagles game and you're still in a good position, in the conference or whatever at 500, but then you could make that big splash for Davante or Mike Evans or even Chris Godwin. I know he had a conversation with Aaron Rodgers on Hard Knocks that was aired. So just any of those bigger name wide receivers, I'm not sure what their plan is. I kind of err towards you. Go get the guy now because I just want to see the roster, how it is before we enter the season so that we know, all right, these are our guys, and not, okay, it's week 7 and we have one more week to make a trade. And if we don't, we're screwed. I'm very nervous about the wide receiver position.
This team needs to be, from a front office organizational perspective, they need to be philosophically consistent. They cannot go out and trade for Aaron Rodgers. They can't go out and give up a pick next year. They can't go out and sign Dalvin Cook here late in the process when they really, again, I love Dalvin Cook. I think he's got something that he can offer the New York Jets. They didn't need Dalvin Cook on this team for 2023. It's nice to have, but they didn't need him. You are telling us with all of those actions, the trading for Aaron Rodgers, giving up all of the draft capital that was required, the pick swap, which forced you to not be able to get a tackle, moving a first-round pick next year. You philosophically have told us that you are all in. You can then not look at this wide receiver room and say, oh, we're good. We're just going to roll with this group. I'm sorry, you can't do that and be philosophically consistent. So for me, they have to go out and make a move. They cannot afford, because Dylan, I'll ask you this question. Let's say, I don't think they're going to be, but let's say they're 2-5 to start the year. Are they now not going to trade for a wide receiver? You have Aaron Rodgers.
You have to. Yeah.
You've gone all in, right? So what's the way? So you're going to wait 7 weeks to get get a good player in the building right now. Let that player develop the chemistry with Aaron Rodgers and just hit the ground running. Is it going to be Davante Adams or Mike Evans? No. Also, who's to say that it's guaranteed to be Davante Adams or Mike Evans in week 7?
Exactly.
It's you don't know what's behind that door. You make the phone calls now to see what's available to you right this second.
Yeah, is the good player now more valuable than the great player potentially becoming available down the line? And it's a huge gamble. I think it's one of the biggest gambles that the Jets currently face, because their most recent gamble is kind of clearing up. And we'll use that as our segue into the offensive line. We're getting healthy up front. Aaron Rodgers said it. We need to wait for the best 5. We need to get them out there hip to hip, playing together, getting that chemistry. And we're starting to get it. We're starting to get healthy. Not everybody's back, but Dwayne Brown off the pup, Mekhi Becton taking the first team reps at right tackle, and he will on Saturday. I believe 4 out of your 5 starters are playing on Saturday against the Giants. I think Dwayne Brown's being held back. So you have your guys. This is it. Barring another injury, this is your 5. Brown, Tomlinson, McGovern, AVT, Becton. I feel pretty damn good about it, just based off what we saw last year and all the possibilities that it could end up with. This team has a lot of upside, especially AVT and Becton playing together finally. So what are your thoughts on the offensive line coming together, and what are you expecting from them this weekend?
We've Mekhi Becton is the right tackle on this football team. I will not hear any other conversations.
No.
If Mekhi Becton is healthy, he is the starting right tackle for this football team.
Like we've been saying.
Do you need to see any more? Just watch the film breakdowns of what he did in the last preseason game he played. He's just moving people. He just picks them up and just moves them. He does whatever he wants. Like, this is the guy that the Jets drafted in the first round. He was great in his rookie season, and he's just been hurt as long as he can stay healthy. Now, again, I've been very critical of the idea of the way that they've gone about this, because it is my contention that if they are worried about him being able to get through a whole game, he cannot be the starting right tackle at that point. But if this, and they've talked about this, that they have a plan here, and they're following this plan to get him to a place where they feel comfortable to have him play the entirety of a regular season game, right? That's the way that they're operating. But he takes a day off this week, and everyone starts freaking out of, okay, here we go, the highs and lows of being Mekhi Becton stan. He looks great, he looks the part, and then now he's taking days off, and you're worried that all of a sudden it's going to come back that he's hurt again, right? But to me, if he checks this last box, if he continues to play well in this final preseason game, I don't see any other reason why he should absolutely be the starting right tackle. Now, I would like to go on record with something here. This was not a topic of conversation for the show today, but I am going to go on record with something right now. I think it is the worst idea in the world to have Aaron Rodgers take a single snap in this preseason game this weekend. Like, I want to be on the record that I think it is a complete disaster for this to be taking place. He's Aaron freaking Rodgers. He's fine. We're going to be okay. He does not have to play in this preseason game. Because I am a tortured Jets fan, okay? I've been down this road before, and I saw the post. I don't know how many people, Dylan, I don't know if you participate. I don't know how many people watching the show participate, but I'm a frequent member of the New York Jets subreddit. And I saw the post where somebody talked about all the people that have gotten hurt 10 years apart in the last preseason game for the New York Jets. That it happened to Chad Pennington, and then 10 years later in the 4th preseason game, it was Mark Sanchez, and now 10 years later, it's going to be Aaron Rodgers. I saw the post, and you know what? Those types of things shouldn't scare you, but as a Jets fan, they scare me. Don't play him. I'm out. On that reason alone, do not play him.
Shit, because now I had the best reason as to why they should play him, and that's because I'll be in attendance. But now I think your historical data trumps my selfishness to want to see him play.
And they were like, oh, Chad Pennington got hurt in the 4th preseason game. And then it was like literally 10 years later that it's the same thing happened to Mark Sanchez, which, by the way, which makes it all weirder, Mark Sanchez came back into that game in the second half. Remember, that's the game that he came back into in the 3rd quarter and played and then got hurt. So he probably shouldn't have even had. Don't play him. Don't play him.
Yeah, and based off Salah's comments, it sounds like he's not just going to play one series. It sounds like he wants Rodgers to end a drive, come off the field, communicate with the offense, go back out there and make those adjustments. I think we're going to see 2 series of Aaron Rodgers, and for that entire 2 series,
I'm not watching the game. I'm not doing
I'll be in the 3rd row, in the end zone.
You DM me and give me updates because I'm not watching. I can't put myself.
I'll only give you the Zerline updates
which is fantastic because that's what I get. That's what you give me every time you go to these games, anyway.
Sidebar: the message that didn't send to you was him missing the field goal. I took a video of it and I sent it to you, and it didn't go through at the stadium. Of all things, it's like they wanted me not to put that out there. But with Aaron Rodgers, yes, he's going to be out there. Hopefully, it's only 2 series. Hopefully, one of them ends in a touchdown. But you're going to have 4 of your 5 starting offensive linemen in front of
3 and outs. Give me 2 3 and outs. 6 plays. That's it. With 4 runs. Give me 6 plays, 4 runs, 2 play action short passes. Just get out of there.
Yeah, I mean, I wouldn't be mad. I'm gonna be, screaming my head off the entire 6 plays, even if they all are handoffs or whatever they are, just because he's out there. But yeah, I agree. It's gonna be, pins and needles. I put out a tweet that I was very nervous, but also very hyped to see him and all the starters in the last preseason game. And then I got invited to the game, and I was like, oh shoot, now my hype is overseeding my nervousness. But now that you've said that stat to me, I can't get it out of my brain, and now I'm back to being nervous again. So hopefully everything's all good with the offensive line. Now, I see in the comments, shout out Momo. He loves the Sabbath pick. Yep, right there. It's a great one. We're going to move on to the main event of the show, the top 23 rankings. Yes, we did it. We're crazy people. We went all the way down to the bottom, started ranking these guys, splitting hairs all the way down to Solomon Thomas and Nick Bawden. And we came up with our top 53, a consensus top 53, because there's no way we were ever going to agree on it collectively. So we're going to start all the way at the bottom, like we have this entire series.
Just real quick, Chris? I will say our top 13, we're pretty close. Like, if not, we're completely the same. Like, we're one spot apart. So, like, the top 13, you and I view very similarly on this team for 2023. Now, the rest of the list,
it falls off the wheels. Yeah. The wheels fall off at like 14, 15 of this list.
That's not true. We made some changes in the pre-show that I think you feel better about because I got closer to where you wanted a player, and I feel better about it afterwards.
Yes, you're right. I do feel better. Like everything we did in this series, we're starting at the very bottom of the list. Spoiler, we gave us a secret 54th player. It was not the same player for us. I have Trey Dean making my roster as the final player, and Chris has Jason Brownlee making the roster as his 53rd player. So collectively, those guys get down at the very bottom. It's splitting hairs. I think now with Corey Davis retiring, you probably can keep both of these guys. You keep 5 safeties and you keep 6 wide receivers. So there's a chance for both of these guys. They're the most likely guys to make the roster, which is why they make our list here. Now, when we made our individual lists, just like the roster bucketing, I put all the rookies at the bottom, but I do have a list of where they would be had I not put them at the bottom because let's face it, Will McDonald is not the 48th best player on this team. He's a lot higher. So as we get into those groups, I'll start sharing where my rookies are, but they had to be at the complete bottom for me until we see them on the field. With that, go. What's up?
There are two players in this chunk that I think are worth a conversation.
Sure.
I think Will McDonald is one.
Yeah.
And I see people that they love Zaire Barnes. Listen, I also love Zaire Barnes, but I don't know until I see the role that they're going to have him in. Like with Will McDonald, I think this is a great little branching off point here. With Will McDonald, Dylan and I can very easily conceive of the role that Will McDonald is going to play, right? I think he's going to be one of the top 3 pass rushing options for this team. Now,
sure.
With that being said, by the way, for those who are watching, Dylan's rankings are in the F column. Mine are in the G column, and then the H column is an addition of those, and then they're ordered. So when we go to the bottom of this list, I have Will McDonald as my 39th player, right? And I have Zaire Barnes as my 51st player. For Will McDonald, again, I still have all the questions that I have for him as a rookie, right? I still don't know the question marks. But from a pure talent perspective, right? Like, look, I have Will McDonald 39th and I have Zach Wilson 46th. Will McDonald is a better player and is going to have a bigger impact for the Jets in 2023 than Zach Wilson is. So I felt comfortable putting him ahead. With Zaire Barnes, like, I just don't know. And so I defaulted because I don't know, because he's a rookie. Like, I just put him towards the bottom. Do I love it? No, I don't love it, right? I don't. I would love to move him up more. But again, some of this stuff at the bottom just kind of filled itself in.
Yeah, exactly. And I'm glad you mentioned McDonald right away because, like I said, 48th is not where I'd have him either. I would honestly have him even higher than you. I'd have him up at like 33 because I think once you get past your 22 starters, then you have he's almost a top 10 backup already on this team. And I know he has to prove it and go show it, but I think his upside is trajecting that way where I'd have him in the low 30s in my rankings. So definitely a good discussion there with Will McDonald. Zach, I think it's funny that I was higher on than you, but yeah, like we said, we're not going to see a lot of Zach. So it doesn't justify putting him higher than 44th. Guys like Bryce Hall, Izzy Abanikanda, these are guys for me that might not even make the roster. So I had to rank them because I'm not going to put a practice squad higher than him on my rankings just because I think he's going to make the team. I had to, at least be sound. I don't think Izzy's going to make my roster, but he was the 50th best player. So it makes sense. So it's just a little, I guess my rookies kind of skew things a little bit, but I don't have Izzy making my 53-man roster.
Really?
Although he's on. Yeah, of course not. You know this. Michael Carter, running back 3.
You think they're gonna just they're gonna use a 5th-round pick on Israel Abanikanda?
Oh shit! Oh no, I'm talking about Bam Knight in my head. Jesus, thank you.
I was
Chris,
gonna
for
say
catching
this
me.
was gonna be.
Yo,
I was like,
that was a
welcome,
terrible moment.
Welcome to the welcome. No, I was gonna invite you in. I was gonna slide the chair over. You can join the Zonovan Knight train. I was like, this is fantastic. Great, welcome in.
I almost just got clipped out and embarrassed all over social media.
Oh, and I should have just let you do it.
You should have.
Let you continue down the road. And be like,
right?
Oh, Zonovan Knight. I helped
no,
you.
Izzy. I'm sorry, Izzy. Yes, he has to be 50 for me. But yeah, my rookies skew everything
with Izzy because the point is still valid here, right? With Izzy, again, I think Izzy's extremely talented. I have him 42nd, but I have him as my lowest rated running back on this list because I just don't know where he slots in.
Yeah.
So because of that, he has to be the lowest rated running back. He ended up being 42nd for me.
And I want to scroll up here now because I do want to reveal where I have Zonovan.
There he is.
I have
Zonovan Knight.
I have Zonovan Knight at 40 on my rankings. I do not have Zonovan Knight making my team. So
this is the point you were trying to make a little bit ago.
This is the point I'm trying to make here with Izzy down there. But yes, I have Zonovan at 40. Clearly, there are players on the practice squad that might make the team over him, but you can't say they are better than Zonovan Knight. So for that reason, I had to be, fair to Knight and put him at 40. But in this whole entire group, we scroll up from Will McDonald and above, Max Mitchell, Randall Cobb, Ashton Davis, Zonovan Knight, Billy Turner even. These are guys that you don't even want to see on the field that much because they're backups, but they're not backups that you want to rely on. Especially, I know Randall Cobb has, a lot of haters out there.
That's wide receiver 4 to you.
Gosh, yeah. Now with Davis out, he is wide receiver 4, and that really scares me. Ashton Davis is probably making this team, even if they do keep Trey Dean. So, I mean, Zonovan Knight, you think he's going to make the team, right? I don't know. I believe.
Yeah, I still think that the surprise cut's going to be Michael Carter, not Zonovan Knight. But we'll see. We'll see if I'm right or wrong on this.
All right. Who else? Billy Turner. That was the other guy that I mentioned. He's another one. I don't want to see him play on the field. Again, he has to be 39 though because
we have to rank the 53 players that we think are going to make the team.
Exactly.
Right? That's what we have to do. But again, right. I don't think I have Billy Turner 36. I don't want to see Billy Turner on the field. That's probably bad news, right?
Yeah.
It keeps going up because you have starred the players that are the biggest disagreements, and I think that's probably where we should focus the bigger names and the players that we have a disagreement on. I think Mekhi Becton's fascinating that you and I independently came to the same place that he's the 27th ranked player on the New York Jets. That's fascinating to me that we both got there. All right, you want to? Do you want to do this? Do you want to do the I mean, if you want to know my Quincy Williams argument, you can just listen to the show last week.
I was going to say, because I had him as a solid and you had him as a questions. So I feel like this is reflective here. I have
exactly how we feel about the player. Yeah.
Fringe top 20 and you have him in the top 30, which means he's probably one of your key backups. I would just bucket those players. And I feel like that's a great role for Quincy Williams. I'm not gonna lie.
I feel pretty great about where I ended up with him. I zero. Again, you're higher on him than me. I'm not surprised that you have him higher than me, but I don't feel like I'm discounting what Quincy Williams provides to the New York Jets. I think if you're a top 30 player, like let me just look at this. I got Quentin Jefferson at 26. I got Laken Tomlinson at 28. Mekhi Becton at 27. Brendan Eccles at 25. Like to me, if you make the top 30 on my team, I think you're a player that can have, I shouldn't say a massive impact, but you can have a strong level of impact on the New York Jets in 2023, right? That's the way that I rank them. I feel really comfortable with that. Like I feel really comfortable saying Brandon Eccles is going to have an impact for this team in 2023. So I feel good at having him there at 25. Now you have him 31st, but again, 6 spots, I think that's splitting hairs.
Exactly. And I had the likes of, Justin Hardy, Tony Adams, right above Brandon Eccles and even Greg Zuerlein because I consider those guys as starters, whereas Eccles is the first off the bench. So I guess 31 is like kind of reasonable for him there, but I don't want any starters to be down at 28 and 29, even 30. I know he's a kicker, but Tony Adams being at 29 as a starter is pretty alarming to me, and it makes me nervous that we have guys that aren't primary players above him on this rankings.
Imagine me being higher on Greg Zuerlein than you. Imagine. I'm at 17, I'm at 30.
I mean, I just had to be he's a kicker, and I
He's a
know he
kicker
can swing
who
games. I
who
understand.
absolutely could have a major impact on whether or not the Jets win or lose in 2023 and hits 50-yard bombs. What are we talking about? That's a top 20
You're not
player.
wrong, and
Why am I being the Greg Zuerlein defender? That's your role.
he's probably a top 25 player for me if I'm like really thinking about it. I can like convince myself to put him up there even above a Connor McGovern at
No,
25, who I have.
as you can see, I couldn't do that. I have Connor McGovern
But
one
you
spot in
have
front of
McGovern
Greg
at
Zuerlein.
16. That's wild. That's another big
Exactly.
discrepancy that we need to get into. I think this is interesting first, though. Mecole Hardman, I have at 22. You have at 24. I think a lot of people are very excited about Mecole Hardman, and I am too, but I don't think Mecole Hardman needs to have a huge role on this team. And I feel like now he's going to need a huge role. Like I mentioned, he's going to be that third guy in 11 personnel, your starting slot guy. I thought they were going to use a big slot. Maybe they keep a Kuntz, so that they can put him as the big slot to replace Corey Davis, even Uzama flexed out. I don't know what they're going to do there, but Mecole Hardman, I had to put him at 22. He's like a fringe starter level player for me.
I feel very similarly. I just have him at 24, right? I think our premise is exactly the same here. All right. You want to explain Connor McGovern? He's the starting center of the football team. He's the guy that is going to be the linchpin of this offensive line. He gets to be a top 16 player. He gets to be the last player.
He's the first person on the entire offense to get replaced this season.
Say that again?
He's the first person on the offense to get replaced this season.
He's the first player on the offense to get replaced this season.
Whether it's injury, I mean, you can't predict injury, but for performance.
I disagree.
Yeah, you don't think Tippmann's going to take over the spot?
I do not.
I feel very confident that maybe by like the bye week, Tippmann's our center.
Now hold on here, because if they remove Lake and Tomlinson and they slide McGovern over and they put Tippmann at center, that's still a win for me.
No, yeah, that I wouldn't count because McGovern's not being replaced. Lakin would be the one being replaced.
I don't think I do not believe this team is going to move centers and go to a rookie in the middle of the season unless there's an injury or there is some level of a change that they need to make somewhere else on the offensive line. Like if Lakin struggles and they need to move AVT over and they want to slide Connor to the right guard spot, that's the type of scenario I can see Tippmann taking over. I do not see Connor McGovern being moved unless it is under an injury circumstance or they need to shuffle around the offensive line.
Right, and I think that's very fair because we don't like Aaron Rodgers doesn't really like rookie offensive linemen, especially at center. So even if that is the case and somebody has to kick out to guard, maybe they are putting Tippmann in those left guard, right guard roles in the preseason for that because they don't want to move McGovern off center with Rodgers back there, because I get it. He wants the guy who's going to know all the protections, know all the calls, be able to, handle his cadence consistently. Rodgers has tons of cadences. Like it's not going to be your normal, Zach Wilson standing back there going through a pre-play and everybody knows when the ball is going to get snapped. Aaron Rodgers is going to do a lot of weird shit, to be honest. And Connor McGovern is probably the best to handle it. I don't know if I can
Did you listen to the mic'd up video that they dropped?
Oh, absolutely, yeah.
Where he goes over to the Bucs and he goes, "No, guys, don't worry, no hard count, no hard count." And he immediately does it to them. Like he immediately does it.
And he
goes,
"Oh no,
he goes, it wasn't a hard count. What are you talking about?"
Yep. I love that. And then "You're not coming back up."
You back up and
backs up.
Player immediately backs up. Like, what are you supposed to do?
I mean, you got called out, man. You got to just do your role. That's so funny. Yeah, I think it'll be interesting. The guy right above Connor McGovern, we have at 20. So this is a player that we do think is going to have an impactful role on the team. CJ Uzoma. I had him at 24. You had him at 15. So that gets him right into the top 20. I'm just not as high on both tight ends. I think in my rankings, I was lower on both tight ends. As you can see, I have Conklin at 17. You have him at 12. I don't know. I know Rodgers is going to utilize them, and I know he likes them, and I'm pretty high on the room overall. I just stacking them up against other positions. I was like, I don't know. Conklin might not be that guy, but Uzama is definitely not the guy for me, clearly based off my rankings. Some people think Conklin could be a top 10 or top 5 tight end in the league. A lot of fantasy talk, but a lot of regular talk is top 5, top 10 tight end. So looking at where we have the two tight ends specifically, me at 17 and 24, you at 12 and 15. Why are you higher on the tight ends?
Yeah, I just think it's going to be out of sheer necessity now with the way that the wide receiver room sets up. Until they make an adjustment there and add in another player, I just think you're going to see the tight ends get utilized more in this offense. And so because of that, I think the stock goes up for both of them. I think Conklin's better than Uzoma. I think Conklin provides, I think Uzoma was brought in here mainly for his leadership ability and what he can
Mhm.
provide in terms of team morale and leadership at a very important inflection point in what Robert Saleh was trying to do with this team. But that doesn't mean CJ Uzoma is not talented. And I think they're both going to be on the field. I just think Tyler Conklin has proven to be a very reliable, consistent. I know he had some phases where he has the drops, but he is the player that I think provided more to the Jets at the position in terms of being a pass catcher. And so that's why I have him rated a little bit higher. But I think there's going to be roles for both of these guys.
Yeah, I referenced the tweet from Zach Rosenblatt earlier about the target share of all our pass catchers in camp with Rodgers specifically. And Garrett Wilson was in a tier of his own despite missing 2 weeks. The second tier, which I think bodes well for my running back debate, as well as Tyler Conklin being a top running back or top tight end, excuse me. The next three on that list were Alan Lazard, which is an obvious, Tyler Conklin, and Michael Carter. Those were your top four, excuse me, with Wilson in target share with Aaron Rodgers. So all those guys are going to have a role. Tyler Conklin's going to have a role. In one of his latest press conferences, Rodgers alluded to his strength at the point of attack getting better, his blocking becoming a little bit better. He's crisp with routes, he said. So all those things bode well for him to make an impact on this team. I know he's been consistent, 500 yards, 3 touchdowns the past 2 seasons, both Minnesota and New York. I'm looking for him to make that big step before I can put him higher than 17 on my list. I think he can easily be top 12 next year when you have, your older players leave or whatnot. So I think Tyler Conklin is the guy that I'm watching. But 17, I just had to put it until I fully see it with Rodgers.
Are we going to do this? We're going to do this again as we do every time when we have this debate where we talk about CJ Mosley and you tell me how he's great and I tell you that he's not.
Yeah, I mean, I have CJ at 11. You have
CJ
him
is
at
a top 12
22.
player. Are you out of your mind? You out of your mind?
He No, he is. I think you have to look at everything that comes along with CJ Mosley and the trust factor of it. Everything that this coaching staff says about him is positive. That doesn't mean that his film is always perfect. I just think that CJ Mosley.
That's a nice way to say that he had some phases in which he was bad last year. That was a very nice way to say that.
Oh yeah, of course. I'm not gonna slander my guy CJ here.
I have him as a top 25 player on the New York Jets. I think that's incredibly reasonable for where CJ Mosley fits on this team.
I think it's asinine to put him above Alan Lazard. I'll be honest. I hate to sound like I hate Alan Lazard, but I feel so weird about because I
That's
have Alan
fine.
Lazard
That you
21.
can fine. You can be okay. That could be your take. You have Alan Lazard at 21. You have CJ Mosley at 11. You can come my way a little bit on this. Look where I have him. I have CJ Mosley at 22. I have Alan Lazard at 18. I'm closer to what you're looking for than the way you've got it set up.
I was saying from your perspective, if you have Mosley at 22 and Lazard at 18, I would personally flip flop them. And then like you have Uzama at 15, I'd probably put CJ like no lower than 15.
You're out of your mind.
Maybe I am, but he's still a damn good football player.
Cover.
Here we go. Momo coming to my defense, heart and soul of the defense. Love it.
I'm sorry,
but
Momo.
here.
Right. Yeah.
Oh,
yeah.
So,
yeah.
We got
yeah,
J.E.
Thank you.
Putting the comment for Chris. I didn't see that one.
He misses tackles and he can't cover. I mean, what are we doing here? Don't worry. It was a Pro Bowler last year. The Pro Bowl.
CJ Mosley and the running back situation is going to be our biggest conflicts this season.
No, but see, here's
I'm
the thing.
really
Once
excited.
the season starts, I don't want to be the guy that every time CJ Mosley makes a mistake, I'm going to tweet at you. Like, it's fun in the preseason, like that you can do this.
Yes.
But like, I'm not doing that when the season starts. I want CJ Mosley to make every tackle in the book. I want him to be able to cover everybody. But like right now, like, I'm sorry, I just can't get there.
Yeah, there will be no trolling of me if CJ Mosley jumps over the defensive line and Chris just wants to be funny because we're both going to be pissed off.
I will tell you when that happens, I'm going to be like, see, I told you. I'll do that for sure.
Oh, man, that's tough. So, yeah, CJ Mosley is literally our biggest discrepancy, 11 ranking spots between them. This one, Jermaine Johnson, right above him, top 15 player on both of our rankings.
This was worse pre-show.
I was going to say this was a bigger discrepancy. It was about 10 spots, and we've bumped it into 6.
Yeah.
Maybe I've twisted Chris's arm a little bit to get him up there.
I'm not moving any higher than this, though.
And that's fine. I think Jermaine Johnson, a lot of this with me specifically is upside with him. Like what he's shown compared to what they say about him. And I feel like I take that into a lot of account, but it's important to know how the coaches feel about players. And that's why a guy like Zaire Barnes is all the way down at the bottom of my list, because I don't know how the coaches feel about him. So Jermaine Johnson, it's got to be 13. His body transformation, his strength, the fact that he said you have to be a good edge setter in the run to become a good pass rusher, solid complementing his complete defensive line abilities, not just, getting after the passer. So I don't know. I think Jermaine Johnson is really special entering year 2. I probably gave him a little bit more credit than, he needed entering the season, but he's going to be higher than 13 when we do this next year. So I think I'm getting, ahead of the hype train with Jermaine Johnson here.
Just scroll up, show the top 13. We are basically in agreement on this top 13, so you might as well just show it off.
I was going to say from Dwayne Brown up, or Bryce Huff up, excuse me, we're pretty much in lockstep. Obviously,
Carl Lawson and Dwayne Brown is not like egregious. Like we're each one spot different on those guys.
Yes, exactly. Dwayne Brown even. So basically our top 14, 13 players, we're all in lockstep. I'm hiding number 1 as if it was any surprise.
As if like it being Aaron Rodgers should be a surprise to anybody.
I think it's funny because weeks ago when we started doing this series, I put out a tweet and asked just everybody on Twitter who their top 5 Jets are. Every time, I want to say like 93%, if I had to say, put these 5 in the bucket. I think it's pretty chalk.
It can't be anybody other than those 5.
And the only people that were thrown into that bucket of top 5 were DJ Reed and Breece Hall. So our 6 and 7 were the ones put into the conversation. Obviously,
I think DJ could get there.
Yes,
if you get another,
we talked about it.
If Breece is healthy, he could be in that conversation as well. But I think it's those 5, and it was easy for me to rank those 5.
Yeah, I think that was probably the easiest for me. We have a comment here about Carl Lawson because we did mention him. He has the back injury. Robert Saleh mentioned that he had. It almost sounded like he had a procedure on his back, and it was something that he has to go through, were the words that Saleh said. So it sounds like Carl Lawson is probably not going to be ready week 1. I think Saleh said he's optimistic about him playing week 1, but there's a chance that he might start on the short-term IR, and that opens the door for another 10th offensive or defensive lineman to make the roster. I think I'd put my money on Pita Toa-Mapenu, the new guy, number 50, the linebacker defensive lineman hybrid, if that is the case with Carl Lawson and he has to miss time. But I believe Carl Lawson is hurt, and I don't think he's in any shape to play by week 1, just based off the videos we've seen at practice. What's up? You got something else to say? I'd
like to use the timeout to share some breaking news that doesn't really impact us, but I'd like to get your initial thoughts.
I got really scared. What happened?
Give you the initial thoughts. Trey Lance has a new home. Trey Lance has been traded from the San Francisco 49ers. He's going to the Dallas Cowboys.
Dak sucks.
Do we know what Trey is? We have no idea what Trey is.
No, but that's bad. I feel like it's an indictment on Dak. My initial reaction is I've not seen one good thing come out of Cowboys camp about Dak. And I'm not saying Trey's going to be their starter by any means, but I feel like they needed to bring in somebody that's seriously going to push the needle with Dak, and somebody with upside that they're not going to be afraid to use if shit gets off the rails with Dak Prescott. But it is pretty impressive that they have Trey Lance now. What do they say with the packages?
It's a mid-round pick.
Okay.
Mid-round pick.
Well,
sorry, I completely derailed you, but I saw it. And,
that's fine. 2 years, 3 years in the NFL. Didn't really play much. Still go for a mid-round pick. Kind of crazy. That entire draft class was Trevor Lawrence or bust. Oh, man. That's wild. That Rams game really screwed the Jets. But, hey, if we had Trevor Lawrence, we don't have Aaron Rodgers. So I'm happy with how we ended it. We didn't get Trey Lance, so I'm cool with it. That's pretty wild. What are your thoughts on Trey Lance to the Cowboys?
I think it's fascinating, right? Because Dak has had a history over the last couple of years of missing time and getting hurt and missing some games.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, okay, I'm going to say something here, and I want to make it very clear. I'm not comparing the two, right? But when you are building a team, you want your backup to be a player that stylistically can do a lot of the same things that your starting quarterback can do, right? I'll give you a perfect example. The Baltimore Ravens were able to kind of keep things afloat when Lamar went down because Tyler Huntley is a very similar style of quarterback, right? It's why the San Francisco 49ers have been able to just have a revolving door at quarterback, and they can find a way to be successful because their system, they bring in quarterbacks that fit their system and allow them to be able to kind of thrive, right? The Jets, they feel as if Zach Wilson is very similar stylistically to the way Rodgers plays. So they feel like if Aaron goes down, again, not saying that Zach Wilson's going to be Aaron Rodgers, but they feel like they don't have to change their playbook. They don't have to make any alterations to what they do on a weekly basis. To me, Dylan, when I look at this, we haven't seen him play a ton at the NFL level. He hasn't played a ton in general. Mm-hmm. But when I think of what Trey Lance's ceiling as a player might be able to be, he kind of reminds me of Dak Prescott, right? So like it feels as if Dak goes down, you've got a player that is mobile, has a pretty decent arm, can probably run that offense. So I'm not, now that the trade has happened and you can kind of think about it, it doesn't really, I'm not that surprised. It kind of makes some sense. So from that perspective, I think it's an interesting move from their perspective.
I'm really glad that you said it like that because I've been preaching that about the quarterback room. Coaches aren't going to assemble a quarterback room just because player A is better than player B. If player B stylistically fits with their playbook, their scheme, their starter does, they're going to tend to look at him more. So I completely understand it. You're never going to have like a Justin Fields type backing up an Aaron Rodgers, just going with that 2021 quarterback room. Even a Trey Lance backing up an Aaron Rodgers. You needed a guy like a Zach Wilson to back up Aaron Rodgers. So I get it. The Baltimore Ravens is the perfect example there with Lamar and Huntley because Lamar goes down. You're not just all of a sudden going to run a drop back offense. Obviously now their offense is completely different, but you still need somebody who's going to do those zone read schemes that Tyler Huntley was able to do. So
it's why the Dolphins signed Mike White, right? He's a very different player than Tua, but he can run the system, right? Yes. It's why Bailey Zappi was drafted by the New England Patriots, and everybody just went because Bailey Zappi can run the offense similarly to the way Mac Jones is. It was so similar that there was a quarterback controversy that broke out in New England in the middle of the season last year of whether or not they were just going to keep it with Bailey Zappi. Like teams do this. Teams like to have their backup be somebody who is similar to the way their starter operates, so they don't have to change too much. They don't have to, or if you're in the case of, let's say, a Houston with CJ Stroud, or you're a team like Carolina with Bryce Young, you have an established veteran behind you, Andy Dalton, Davis Mills, I guess, is an established veteran at this point, but a guy who can just step in and run it the way that you want it to. Again, they're not stylistically 100% the same, but they are a player that can very easily just walk off the sideline, put a helmet on, and nothing has to change about the way they operate.
Yep. And being a fan of the draft and doing so much research on, not every quarterback coming out, but a lot of the quarterbacks coming out, I liked guys like Malik Cunningham coming out of Louisville, but it just doesn't make sense for me to think that the Jets would target a Malik Cunningham to be a backup quarterback in their system based on how they play football. So it's kind of tough to separate everything, but it's not always just comes down to talent with the quarterback. It comes down to who's going to play.
It's a 4th round pick, by the way. 4th round pick is what they gave up for.
Yes, I did see 4th round pick, which reasonable. I mean, for the Cowboys, I'm saying it's tough for the Niners to give up 3 first-round picks and only get a 4th back. But the fact that they haven't missed a beat says enough, right. And they've been able to acquire Christian McCaffrey despite the 3 first-round picks being gone already. So
you take the L and move on. You take the L and move on. Don't view it as a sunk cost thing. You got to just take the L and move on.
That's what the Jets did. They took the medicine with Zach Wilson. They moved on, got Aaron Rodgers, and nobody's going to bat an eye when this is a lot better of a situation. So Momo asked in the chat, okay, guys, I don't want to do the math. So who's out? I believe based on our ranking series from the entire combination of all the 2 months of doing this, I think I have Trey Dean and Brownlee making the roster. And I think you only have Brownlee making the roster. Am I correct?
At this point, and we'll see. We'll take a look at what they add in, right? If the Jets, because again, this is the thing about Joe that is one of his strengths is he's going to look to add, right? He's going to have all this newfound money with Corey Davis, but they're going to look to see when other teams cut down from their 53, teams are going to have surpluses in some areas that might be important for the Jets. A team might have surplus in the linebacker department where the Jets can add some depth there. They might have some offensive line depth the Jets can go out and snag. They might use the cash to go out and trade for a wide receiver. So it's one of those things where That's where Joe might be able to thrive. He might be able to use the cap space and use the roster flexibility in that capacity. But looking at it the way we have it now, yeah, I think Brownlee's going to make the team.
Yeah, I think now with the Davis thing, unless there's another move made between now and Tuesday at 4 p.m. when the rosters have to be locked into 53, if there's a move made, Brownlee's probably the guy on the edge, but it's tough. It's going to be, 5 days of waiting. I don't think they're going to make a move. I still feel like they're just going to push their chips in the table with the wide receiver position. Other than that, I think that's pretty much our ranking series. Obviously, Aaron Rodgers, the GOAT, Sauce, and Quinnen Williams are our top three. Yeah, take a big, deep breath now. Right. We've done it all. And I think it's no surprise. Like the top 10 that we had were the top 10. You add in Dalvin Cook, he's a top 10 player, even though he's probably going to be a backup for most of the season. And that brings us to the final preseason game. We're here. We only got one more. We just need to pray. Nobody gets hurt.
I've told you my thoughts. I've told you my thoughts on this game. I've told you I'm not watching. Don't play him. I shouldn't be playing. I'm going to be I want nothing to do with this.
So my question for you then is, if you had to pick a player non-starter for me to tweet about to you so that you know how they did specifically in the game, because you're not going to watch, who would that person be? Give me one on offense and give me one on defense.
I need a Zonovan Knight update.
Okay.
Need a Zonovan Knight update, and let me know. Let me know. Let me know how Zaire Barnes does. Okay, those are 2 players I want to know about.
Zaire Barnes 100% is going to be on my radar. It's kind of tough. Like when you sit down low in the end zones, it's really hard to see when they're obviously on the far side of the field. I'm used to sitting up at the nosebleed 300.
I love sitting up there behind an end zone, sitting up. You got a great angle that you get to watch the game from the all 22 perspective.
I was literally
it's beautiful. The best way for me personally to enjoy a football game, I've started doing it now more often where I'll sit way up so I can get the all 22 angle, and it changes everything.
It seriously does. Zaire Barnes is 100% the guy I was going to name on defense. This is kind of an offense and special teams guy, but I want to see if Gibson gets on the field with Rodgers at any capacity. I feel like they're going to rotate, starters with the first drive, and depending on how long Rodgers plays, they're going to try to get one of those UDFAs, whether it's Brownlee or Gibson. I really want to see what Gibson can do offensively, because if he can make a splash on special teams and he can just make a splash on offense, like a backup to Mecole Hardman, that would be exciting for me too. So those are definitely my guys. I'll definitely be sending you all of Greg Zerloin's warm-up kicks, I promise.
Yes, appreciate that.
Any final thoughts before we get out of here? We're just about at the hour mark.
We're there. We've made it. And I think the next week or so is going to be fascinating to see what final tweaks Joe Douglas and company put on this roster and tinker and finalize this roster construction for 2023, because it's go time then. And this team has a tough schedule the first part of the season. They get off to a just roaring start with a Monday Night Football game against the Bills. Everybody is going to be paying attention to that football game to see how the New York Jets and Aaron Rodgers do with their first taste of the limelight in 2023. It's here. Like, we are ready to go. And so this last preseason game, let's just get through it. Hope everybody's healthy and make sure that that this roster is as close to 100% as it can be. And then it's go time. It's time to shine.
Yep, exactly. I put together my final 53 a couple days ago. I don't feel confident about it, but I know as soon as they lock in the 53, they're going to claim players. So it doesn't matter. The 53 is only the 53 for 30 seconds. The Jets actually have been getting a lot of players claimed this year, or the past 2 years, from other teams. Obviously, I think Jason Pinnock, Lawrence Cager are the big ones to the Giants. Jonathan Marshall was another one who got poached, I believe, from the Steelers. So they're getting guys that are, willing to be picked up by other teams. I want to see them do the opposite this time. Pick up a guy here, pick up a guy there, backup slot. Hopefully, I know Darnay Holmes might be cut from the Giants. Bit of a zone corner, but I liked him coming out of college. Maybe he's not been good for the Giants, and that's why they're going to cut him. But you need a backup slot. Michael Carter can't do it all. So I'm very excited to see it. I appreciate everybody tuning in today. Tons of questions and chat interaction. It's great. We should be having Glenn back in a couple weeks. I know he's still on vacation in the south of France. He put out a video.
South of France. My guy's just hanging out in the south of France. I gotta.
Yeah, he's really doing it up real quick before the season starts. So we'll get him back. Hopefully, maybe we could do a round table, the three
But
of
you know
us.
what's going to happen once he. This is why he's taking the vacation, because once he gets back, because he'll do this throughout the season. He just sends me clips of players that he sees, and he goes, "You gotta watch this guy. You gotta watch this guy. You gotta watch." Like just all season long. That's what he does, and I love it. I'm not saying it in a bad way. I appreciate it, but he's always watching, so I know the moment he's back, he's just going to be grinding tape. It's just all he's going to do.
Oh yeah, his Twitter account Jets Picks, he's still churning out players, and I'm falling so far behind in this class that I'm getting nervous that when we get to our draft segments, Glenn and I, that I'm just gonna have to mute myself and just here Glenn, big box, one person by yourself, but he's a worker with that stuff, so it's gonna be fun. I can't wait to get into the draft stuff. I mean, I've barely dabbled into it. I know you've done a couple things, but it's just exciting. We're here, week 0 of college football.
Yeah, Navy
We
Notre
have
Dame tomorrow. Looking
Yeah,
forward to
that's
it.
gonna be that's the one I'm looking at, and I think USC
They play late.
plays.
They play late
Yeah,
tomorrow night.
yeah, that'll be a good one too. Yeah, exciting. We're here. We got one bye week after this week, technically before the season starts. So hopefully everybody's good, all healthy. We'll be back next Thursday. We appreciate everybody's tuning in, and until next time, let's go Jets.